Hello, it's POGMarineFPS. I posted this question in a post, and we're going to go over some interesting comments here. The post is, who has a 40 Smith & Wesson? Why not a 45 or a 9mm? Just curious, convinced me to like the 40 Smith & Wesson. Now, as you guys know, I don't got a 40 Smith & Wesson. I have shot 40 Smith & Wessons. I've even shot a 40 Smith & Wesson Glock. It's just not my thing. But I'm going to go over the reasons why in another video. Why not the 40 Smith & Wesson? You can check that out. There's actually a funny video featuring Tactical Timmy Tango. It'll pop up in the corner wherever it may be, and there's going to be a more serious video in the future. So if that video has been made and this is an old video, check that video out as well. Now, all I want to do is people to convince me the 40 Smith & Wesson. And some people, like, I think you're a troll, posting a pointless post, but my opinion is as relevant as yours, and then they don't give an opinion. And then another one is the fact you even think the 40 is a useless round is enough to keep me out of the furthest discussion. Give me reasons why it's liable. And then some other person saying it's definitely not useless. I'd rather have a 40 than a 45. I want reasons why you'd rather have a 40 than a 45 or wherever it may be. And then I really like this post by Hunter. It says, ignore 40 and go to the 10mm if you don't like the 9 or the 45. Which, if you don't know the history of some cartridges, the 10mm was originally used by the FBI through the FBI trials. They said it's way too much recoil for them, so they decided to cut it down to a 40, which affected the velocity and a great deal. So it's not as potent as it used to be. It's more of a handicapped 10mm. And yes, as you see in the bottom right there, it says Hunter also said 10mm is a hotter round, and hotter round than any of the three, and that's a fact. Which one would you choose in a styling preference? With me, I would choose a 9mm due to the capacity and the velocity. Yes, 10mm is a hotter round. You get a little bit more velocity out of it, but you know, you're giving up the capacity. And I totally agree with Brian here when he commented on Rick's post. Now with Brian, he says, no they won't. It's not about the caliber. It's about experience and shot placement. It is really critical to hit them in the correct areas if you are trying to down somebody that is an immediate threat. And yes, Johnny, 9mm, 40, 45 caliber are indistinguishable by wound track. Knockdown power is myth. Yes, it is a myth. And according to that chart that's right here, you got 40 Smith & Wesson, which is right here, and then you got 45 ACP, and if you look at them, they're about the same, and then 9mm about the same. Now, 45 ACP, 40 Smith & Wesson, a little bit more velocity on the 40 than the 45, and a lot more velocity with the 9mm. So take that into consideration. They're about the same numbers-wise and scientific-wise, because this is a pistol cartridge power comparison chart. Alright, and then Paul asked a question. Definitely not a useless cartridge. If it's the only one you have, it's plenty of power. Yes, I agree with that. My question is, why not have all three? I do. The reason why I don't have all three and I stick to the 45 and the 9mm is because it's more common. The capacity I get with the 9mm, and the more heavier bullets I get with the 45, not the same velocity, a lot less velocity than the 9mm, but it's just, if I want to use a heavier bullet, I go to the 45. If I want to use a lighter bullet with more capacity, I go to the 9mm. That's why. Why not 10mm? Well, like you just said right there, because it's also a lot more expensive. But, you know, if you reload, sometimes you get away with it. And Greg, yes, you're right. 40 is a 10mm shortened. Yes, I agree with that as well. 9mm, 45, both are in good supply and military rounds. But John, it's there's more 9mm, most definitely over 45. I'm pretty sure you agree as well. And yes, I totally agree with Mike too. Why not just to each their own firearm? Like, I'm not trying to tell you guys don't get a 40 Smith & Wesson. Just do and buy what you want. I'm not the one that makes you buy a 9mm or a 45 and then you're disappointed. Don't blame me. use your own brain. If you want a 40, you can get a 40. You know, just do your proper research, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just curious of the responses. Like, try to convince me. So far, nobody's really convinced me. They've convinced me more towards 10mm, which sounds like a pretty cool round, and I have investigated more about the 10mm, but I'm not going to get really into it and what I found. But I've already told you a little bit about the FBI. And he went from 40 to 9mm. Have all three. With nearly, see, this is what I was saying, with, especially with that chart, and it's what David is saying. He has all three, which I believe he means 9mm, 45, and 40. He says with nearly the same ballistics, I have a 3-inch barrel any day. Yes, I noticed that with the Leos as well. The law enforcement officers, they'll switch from 45 to 40 to 9mm. You can still find 40s and 9mm and 45s with the Leos. It's really weird. I guess it's more, like he said, in the 60s and 70s. John said that in the 60s and 70s they were all over the place, even with like revolvers, 357s. He's totally correct on that. Alex. No, I don't know Alex, but my friend has an XD subcompact in 40, and I told him the same thing I'm asked in this post. Has convinced me to buy a 40. Now, he couldn't give me a reason to choose the 40 over the 9mm or the 40 over the 45. So it's like, just why? And pretty much some of the reasons, and going through the comments, I see, you know, it's more affordable. The firearms don't cost as much. Sometimes it's price off. Sometimes it's a sale because they're not selling as great as the 9mm and 45s, because it's very popular rounds, especially the 9mm. And like I said, with capacity, there's like, I'm not totally downing 40, but there are some pistols out there that could shoot a good amount of rounds. 14 rounds in the magazine is pretty good. And if you're in California or wherever it be, and you get the magazine restrictions, 40 would be a good caliber. Now that kind of convinces me somewhat. It kind of convinces me with the California states. You guys are under so many different laws that I would actually think about carrying a 40 in California because of magazine restrictions, and it wouldn't be affected, because either way, if I had a 9mm with 10 rounds or if I had a 40 Smith & Wesson with 10 rounds, then either way it's 10 rounds, and the 40's a little bit bigger. You know, it is similar ballistics, but I'll probably carry a 40 if I lived in California. So that's some good convincing. I kind of convinced myself through just reading this post from Dylan, saying that his held 14 rounds. It kind of reminded me more like California. But I'm waiting to see if somebody is from California and says something like that. But I doubt it, because this is a Gun Owners of Maine post. But that would be really nice if somebody was from California. And I love my 40. It's got more power than my 9mm. It weighs less than a 45. Yes, it weighs less than a 45, but they're very, very similar power to a 9mm. Back to the XDs. Yeah, XDs are very great pistols. Somebody else had XD as well. I can't remember what his name was, but yes, those are very, very good pistols. And he's got a 9mm, so it's probably really smooth shooting. I actually had my XD in 45, and I was surprised how nicely that it shot. I don't have it anymore. I needed the money really bad, and I sold it, and I wish I never sold it. I wish I would have sold an organ or something, but it's a really nice pistol. 40 is so not useless, much better than... You guys need to tell me why. Why is, just give me some reasons why. But I didn't really get any major reasons why. What really popped up the most was the weight and knockdown power, which we already know is a myth. And I really like, I'm going to say the best comment I got to hear with facts is from Corey. So, you know what, Corey? It was good on you for posting this chart. It actually was really cool, and it gave you more of a visual of how similar the rounds actually really are. So thanks, Corey, for posting that. Pretty much concludes my video on the post that I made, just going on with comments. Am I convinced that I'd buy a 40? Depending on the place. Like I said, if I was in California, I'd probably have a 40, just because it's a little bit bigger than the 9mm and you get the same capacity. But since I live in a free state of Maine, I'm going to stick with my 9mm. And that's what I'm going to use, my 9mm. If you're curious what I carry, just throw it out there. I carry a Beretta PX4 Storm, full size, concealed in the waistband, and it's actually quite comfortable, and I don't realize it's there sometimes. But anyway, some people are going to go crazy over that, but it is what it is. But thank you guys for watching. Have a nice day. Stay safe.